Howard Wilkinson was scrapping around for results and sat the players down to watch a video. And Kevin Kyle tells the story that they were like, oh, well, he's going to put on Barcelona or something here. And what he actually put on was geese flying in formation. And
Welcome to the latest episode of Season 2 of Footballing Covered. In Season 1, we took you inside Blackburn, Leeds, Portsmouth and Liverpool, FIFA and a lot more. Heard about extraordinary stories of football chaos, cock-ups and outright corruption. This season, we've been delving inside 8 more Premier League clubs, as well as having 2 special episodes. One about the future of club football at the highest level, and this one about life after the Premier League, outside of it, and what a painful experience it's been for so many clubs, me included as a Birmingham City fan. I am your host, Will Brazier, and every episode I'm joined by Sporting Intelligence's Nick Harris. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks. I'm looking forward to this because although there's lots of upsides to the Premier League, there are downsides, and this is kind of a salutary lesson about what can go wrong after the money stops.
Well, it's something I've experienced, you've experienced at Southampton, and our guest has Chris Wetherspoon, a Sunderland fan who is an accountant by day, but who, in his own words, blathers on about sport and Sunderland. Chris does this on the Wise Men Say podcast and has also written extensively on the Wise Men Say website, as well as for 442, The Economist, and When Saturday Comes. Chris, how are you? Sunderland, how did it happen?
How did it happen? I think I've got like a long line of ancestors to blame for it. Basically, I went to my first ever game when I was 6 years old, and I was addicted from then on. And I'm really not sure why to this day.
What happened in that game?
They won, which was obviously like it was in the Premier League as well. They won 1-0 against Coventry City, and which is obviously what you need to rope in a young 6-year-old, and never looked back since.
Unfortunately for you as Sunderland fans, there's been quite a lot of chaos. I mean, what else would you say?
Ridiculous, to be honest. You sometimes wonder, and you're like, am I being like a bit self-centered here? Is it just our club? But increasingly, I think, yeah, it is just our club at times. Yeah, I mean, it was funny actually when you mentioned Howard Wilkinson. I mean, Kevin Kyle, like our ex-striker, tells this story far better than I ever could. But there's a story about when Howard Wilkinson was scrapping around for results and sat the players down to watch a video. And this was back in 2003. So I had this image of, can you remember the old box videos that you had at school where they'd reel them in? And Kevin Kyle tells the story that they were like, oh, well, he's going to put on Barcelona or something here. And what he actually put on was geese flying in formation. And, and the idea was, I think the idea behind it was to show that like one can fall out of line, but if the rest stick together, we can all do it as a team.
It's the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, well, I mean, it worked because we went down with a record low points total. So
he's a really interesting guy. He's actually a really cerebral guy. He's fascinated by military history. I spent a weekend on the Somme with Howard Wilkinson in 2014, the centenary of the beginning of the First World War. The football family, that is the Premier League, the Football League, the FA, various officials sort of took a military history tour of the Somme, looking at the involvement of footballers in the First World War, and Howard was on that, and it was absolutely fascinating. Greg Dyke was also on the bus, so I was sitting next to Greg Dyke, and Howard was sitting behind us, and we were chatting about all sorts of things. He had some great stories from when he was manager at Leeds. He managed Eric Cantona at Leeds. Really, really interesting guy. Hinterland way outside football, so his geese video doesn't surprise me at all. What was it like as a Sunderland fan to watch the Netflix documentary and have so many people raving about it being good entertainment? Because I imagine if I was a fan of that club and it had been catalogued in such detail, because I didn't follow Sunderland day in, day out. So watching that a year later or whatever it was when it actually came out, I'm still thinking, I'm trying to remember what happens next. How many games do you lose? As a fan, are you watching that and enjoying it at all? Are you watching it thinking, oh my God, this is terrible? Or are you just not watching it? Because as a piece of entertainment for someone outside that situation, it's quite gripping.
Yeah, so I think, I know we're talking about the first series here, but I think it's important to point out that there is definitely among Sunderland fans, there's a real distinction between the first series of Sunderland Till I Die and the second series. So the first series came out just before Christmas in the excuse me, in the first season in League One.
Yeah.
Now we were in the top two then. We had new ownership who we believed were genuine, nice guys, communicating to us on a level, doing the best for the club, rooting out all the bad influences, and the general buzz around the place was great. And so even though what the first series showed on the pitch was obviously dreadful, what it did, the first series also focused a lot on the fans and the Pete the taxi driver, for example. He's like kind of the hidden gem of the series who came out, and like, so it focused on that. So it was something that people, myself included, were proud of, and you could look at it and go, well, yeah, that was terrible, but it's different now. So it's fine. We can look back at this and say, oh, thank goodness we're past that. And now because it's given us what we have now. The second series feelings aren't quite the same on that.
In terms of you sort of pointing out about Donald and Methven, the Emperor's New Clothes, that you're calling them out on the stuff that's wrong, that they haven't got any money. I mean, that personally got you into a few confrontations, didn't it? Can you tell us a bit about legal threats, even about the police being involved at one point?
I think I was just the one who, for whatever reason, Stuart Donald took umbrage with. Like, I remember actually the first thing he took umbrage with was me in a separate conversation with someone on Twitter. Was saying that my understanding being that it wasn't the manager directing the sign of Will Grigg, and he came out and said that was a load of rubbish. Now there's evidence on the most streamed platform in the world that it plainly wasn't the manager directing the sign. I'm not saying the manager didn't want him, but it got to a point where the money was too daft and it was directed by someone else, sort of thing. Now, so yeah, for whatever reason, he took umbrage with me. And I remember when the Mark Campbell deal fell through, basically I'd said, because also what would frequently happen was something would get reported in a newspaper, often in a newspaper that where they built up a kind of, I don't want to say like opposition to, but it was never in like, say, like local newspapers, which like fans would have an issue with saying they were talking rubbish. It would often be like the Daily Mail or the Sun, which like there would be newspapers that fans had no qualms with saying, well, that's a load of rubbish. And so it came out that the Mark Hamill deal was off, and I said something along the lines of, this will get quashed, but the proof will be in the pudding, sort of thing. And he basically took exception to that, and obviously you get like quite a big influx of people kind of having a go, and to be fair, I replied and just said, oh yeah, like, nice guy, like, so much for being a nice guy, like, just encouraging a pile-on. The next day I got an apology, and it said he was going to take a leave of absence from Twitter to reconsider his conduct. And
this is Donald.
Yeah, this was Stuart
the owner of
now.
the football club's going to take a leave of absence from social media to consider his own behaviour towards fans of the club he owns.
Yeah, but
I mean, that's pretty special, isn't it? I knew this episode was not going to be full of laughs, but I didn't expect to feel so bad. But it has happened in so many clubs.
I mean, well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, and they've been like obviously the way I've told the tale there, it's like, oh god, like, this is ridiculous. But it's become quite comical. Like, it has genuinely become comical.
Yeah.
Really low to compare anything to like Donald Trump and that. But like when last year when there was news coming from America every single day about something that he'd said or done that was just ridiculous. Like you just look at it
several times a day. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was obviously on a much lower level and a significantly, in my opinion, less malicious level. That was the same at Sunderland. Like you couldn't check Twitter on like a lunch break, or you couldn't read the local paper without reading something that just made you think, what on earth is going on?
I think it's an important message to do, because so many people like me watch the Netflix documentary and sort of see him as like, when you mentioned the Will Grigg thing, it's sort of like, harmless, goofy owners, like, frivolously putting the money away. But then not to know the malicious side of it, I think it's very important to tell.
Yeah, and I think the thing with that Netflix series is quite a lot of Sunderland fans who I speak to anyway were quite pissed off with the second series, because it kind of came across, certainly to us, like maybe not so much to like people who don't know the ins and outs, it came across as like a vanity exercise for them.
Yeah.
Like the scene where they get like the huge attendance on Boxing Day, and Charlie Methven's like kind of disdainfully talking to the sales girl. What was never mentioned in Netflix was that was like a fan initiative. A guy came up with the idea to donate a ticket, and the club piggybacked on it. Now, there's nothing wrong with the club piggybacking on it, because it was a great initiative. It raised a lot of it got a lot of people to a game that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford to, and it raised money for charity. But it was very much a case, which in my opinion is a kind of hallmark of Charlie Methven's time at Sunderland.